All right, so this is multiplying rational and dividing rational functions. So it's important to understand that this has to be a multiplication problem. We've talked about this. If you have 3 plus 4 divided by 3 plus 5, you can't cancel that and be like, oh, that's 4/5. This is not legal. Like, please don't do this. Okay, this you would have to add first, and you get 7/8, which is not the same thing as 4/5. Okay, but now if you have multiplication, now you can cancel off this, so you get 4/5. If you would have multiplied, you would have gotten 12/15, which reduces to 4/5. So when you're multiplying, then you can cancel like things. So if you look at example 1 here, we're all going to be multiplying. So on example 1, this is like with this. So you end up with 3y divided by y squared minus 9. Okay, now let's talk about what y squared minus 9 is. That is y minus 3 and y plus 3. Okay, and so you can't cancel 3 times y with 3 minus y. You don't know what y is, and so multiplying by 3 does not do the same thing as adding or subtracting. So that would be your final answer. Now on your homework tonight, that is for tonight, you're going to have a couple that ask for the excluded. I'm going to just come over here and write it in purple. It's going to ask for the excluded values. And it's going to have like the S in parentheses because that means sometimes there's just one, but sometimes there could be multiple. Well, if I look at this denominator, what are excluded? Things that make the denominator 0 because you can't divide by 0. So excluded values, these are the values that it can't be. So my excluded values in this case are going to be 3 and a negative 3. Now some kids want to say, well, shouldn't you put y can't equal 3 and a negative 3? But the name is excluded values. So it's wanting the values that it can't be. So you would just say that those are my excluded values. And I'm going to do that on a few of these problems, but I'm not going to waste my time to do excluded values on every question because it's going to kind of come about. So on the next question, it says, what values make the function undefined? You can't find undefined values from the way that this is written. So what makes this function undefined? Well, the top, I can factor it. It's p plus 3 and p minus 1. And on the bottom, that would be p plus 5. No, excuse me. Isn't that p minus 5? Because it's a negative 2. So p minus 5 and p plus 3. So again, if it's asking for undefined, it's asking for your excluded values. And like I said, I'm not going to do this on every question because it's not going to ask on every question on your homework, but that's what that's asking. So my excluded values would be 5 and a negative 3. Now, if they asked me to simplify this question, I'm going to go ahead and do that because we've already started. These would cancel, okay? And so if I simplified it, I can cancel those. Those would divide to 1. I would have p minus 1 and p minus 5. Now, a lot of you, I don't even want to write this on here. A lot of you are like, ooh, the p's cancel. Okay, that's like doing this up here. You can't just cancel the 3's. That doesn't even make any sense. You don't even know what that value is, so you cannot cancel those. This is my answer. P minus 1 over p minus 5. The only way you can cancel is if the factors are exactly the same, like p plus 3 and p plus 3. Okay, so on example 3, you would take out an a to the 4th because on the top they both share an a to the 4th. That would give you b minus 2. And on the bottom you would take out an a to the 3rd, and that would give you a 2 minus b. Okay, and so we need to talk about this. First off, if I look at these right here, I have a to the 4th on the top and a to the 3rd on the bottom. So I know my answer is going to be, yes, I know my answer is going to be an A. Now this is where we need to discuss some stuff. B minus 2 over 2 minus B. So like put a number in. I'm just going to put like 10 in. 10 minus 2 is 8. 2 minus 10 is a negative 8. So it divides to a negative 1. And if I put like 7 in, 7 minus 2 is 5. 2 minus 7 is a negative 5. That still is a negative 1. So these two things do not cancel to 1, like up above where it's p plus 3 and p plus 3. Because it's p minus 2 and 2 minus, or sorry, b minus 2 and 2 minus b, they're always going to come out opposites. They're always going to come out as a negative 1. So those would cancel to a negative 1 times a. Or if you flip to the back on this, I believe it's just going to say negative a. So if those are opposites of each other, they don't divide to 1 anymore. They divide to a negative 1. All right, on the next questions, you can, so if I was doing fractions, I'm going to like come up here and do fractions. If I had 2 thirds times 9 twelfths, okay, I could multiply and get 18 over 36, and 18 over 36 reduces to 1/2. So I could multiply and then simplify. Okay, I'm going to use like blue. Could I simplify? Sorry, that's a 3, and I put a 1. And then 3 goes into 6, and I simplify, and I get 1/2. So could I simplify and then multiply, or multiply and then simplify? It doesn't matter. So you need to make the decision for yourself. Okay, the part about the blue, I'm going to tell you right now, if you're kind of a disorganized person, I would multiply first and then cancel things, because it seems like if you cancel first and then multiply, you miss something. So that's how I'm going to do this problem, but if you're getting the same answer, you're fine. So if I multiply the top, that's 56xy squared over 21 times 16. I'm going to have to get out a calculator. 21 times 16 is 336, and it would be x cubed, y cubed. Okay, so if I look at that, 336, I think I've divided them both by 8. So I think that would be 7 over 42. Okay, and then I have 1x on the top and 3 on the bottom, so that'd be x squared, and then I have 2 y's on the top and 3 on the bottom, so y. So this would be my answer. So you're going to multiply, and then you're going to simplify. I could have, and I'm going to use like a red pen, I could have been like, oh, 8 goes into 16 twice. 7, where'd I mess up? See, this is where, because I don't, maybe it isn't 7. Let me see. 7 over 42 reduces to 1/6. Good morning, Mrs. Williams. It's actually nighttime. That's probably why. So 1/6. 7 over 42 reduces to 1/6. Okay, so if you simplify first, those would be a 1 and a 2, and then 7 goes in here 3 times. And this x would cancel with one of those, and 2 of those would cancel with one of those. So now if you multiply the cross the top, you'd have a 1 over 6yx squared, which is the same answer. So, but if you look at all that crossing out, it's kind of messy. So if you're a messy person, you could lose something in that. So you might want to multiply first. Okay, now on the next one, if you notice the sign says divide. So when you divide with fractions, you multiply, so by the reciprocal. Okay, some keep change, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to tell you the rule. The rule that you need to learn is that when you divide fractions, you multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, that's the mathematical rule. Everything else you guys say just confuses me. All right, so now I'm just going to go straight across. So if I go straight across, I end up with 60 mk squared, c squared, d squared. Okay, and on the bottom you get 15 I'm just going to do it in the same order, m to the 5th, c squared, d. Okay, and so if I look at that, 60 divided by 15 is 4. So that's going to go on the top because the bigger number's on the top. You have 1m on the top, so you're going to have m to the 4th. You don't have a k to cancel, so my arm keeps getting in the way. K squared. To cancel, you have a c squared over a c squared. Anything divided by itself is 1, so my c's would cancel out, and then I have a d on the top. So this is my answer. So you multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, on the next one, I would factor everything before I tried to cancel. So you have k minus 3 over k plus 1. And then this would be 1 minus k and 1 plus k. The 1 needs to go first because the k is the thing that's negative. And then on the bottom, you would have what? K minus 3 and k minus 1. Okay, so let's look at, I'm just going to use yellow. These are exactly the same. They cancel. Now, let's look at this. K plus 1, 1 plus k. If I put a 5 in there, 1 plus 5 is 6. And if I do 5 plus 1, it's also 6. So those are the same. So those all cancel to 1. But now if you look at these, those are not the same. 1 minus k, if I did 1 minus 7, that's a negative 6. And then 7 minus 1 is a positive 6. So they divide, but they don't divide to a positive 1. They divide to a negative 1. So my answer on this one is a negative 1. Okay, if I look at the next question, my sign in the middle is a divide. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal and I'm going to factor. So on the top, I can take out a 2 and that leaves me with d plus 3. And on the bottom, that would be d plus 2 and d minus 1. Got to get good at factoring. Multiply by the reciprocal. So now the bottom would go to the top. So I'd have d plus 2 and d plus 1. And then d plus 3. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is highlight the things that are exactly the same. That's exactly the same, and that's exactly the same. So those are going to cancel. Now, d plus 1, is that opposite of d minus 1? If you put a number in like 7, 7 plus 1 is 8, 7 minus 1 is 6. That doesn't divide like on example 6. That doesn't give me the same. Those are different numbers. So that is my answer. My final answer is 2. Sorry about that. 2 parentheses d plus 1 over d minus 1. Now, some kids on the test will multiply that in and give me 2d plus 2 over d minus 1. There's different reasons you want to do different things for other classes. I would accept both answers in here because we're just learning to simplify. When you get into calculus, you're going to want to multiply that in because to find the derivative of it makes it a lot simpler. But we're not in calculus. So if you would like to leave it 2 times d plus 1, that's fine. Okay, now if you look at the next one, this is actually just like the last one. You're taking a fraction divided by a fraction. So I'm going to rewrite it. So you have x squared over, well, that's difference of squares, 3x minus 2y, 3x plus 2y. And then I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. So that's 2y minus 3x over x to the third. Okay, so if I look at this, again, we've been looking at these. These are not the same. 3x minus 2y is exactly opposite of 2y minus 3x. So those are going to divide, but they're going to divide to a negative 1. And then I have an x squared and an x, so you'd have a negative 1 left on the top, and then an x parentheses 3x plus 2y. That is your answer. Okay, and so to do this out, you would take, and you could multiply it in, 3x squared plus 2xy. I would take either answer. Both answers have uses, but in this case, that would be my simplified terms. Okay. All right, so your story problems on this are kind of interesting. They are actually not mathematically hard, but they're logically hard. So at the end of her high school soccer career, Ashley made 33 goals out of 121 attempts. Write a ratio that represents the number of goals attempted at the end of her high school career. So she made ratio of the number of goals attempted by Ashley at the end of her high school career. So didn't she make 33 out of 121, right? So it says, suppose Ashley attempted A goals and made M for her first year in college. Write a rational expression to represent the ratio of the number of career goals made to the number of career goals attempted, okay, at the end of her college year. And it actually says, they put it in the wrong order. I hate this. The number of career goals, write a ratio of the number of career goals made to, so that's on the top, to the number of career goals attempted. okay, at the end of her first year in college. So if you look at this, she made M goals, so it's going to be 33 plus M divided by she attempted A, so 121 plus A. This is all you basically have to do for your application type questions. That's it. That's all it's asking to do is read it and be able to set up the fraction. A lot of you skip this part because they are kind of easy, but when we get into the harder questions next week and the week after, if you haven't practiced these easy ones, you're going to struggle, okay? So your assignment is in the classroom.